Welcome to So You Want to Be a Real Estate Agent. Are you evaluating your career in real estate? Feel like you're ready for a fresh start? Or ready to take your career to the next level? This is your podcast. Welcome back to So You Want to Be a Real Estate Agent. I'm Meredith Fogle along with Alicia Soekawa. Hello, Alicia.
Hello.
Gorgeous as ever. And Deborah is running late, but she's going to join us today. I think at some point we're going to do kind of a short-ish episode. But what we wanted to talk about today was handling what feel like ever increasingly complex transactions in this shifting market we're in. I don't know about you, Alicia, but in my experience, the transactions that my team members are handling, the transactions that I am handling, the transactions that my coaching clients are handling are all having issues right now. So, like the cakewalk days of the easy sale seem to be over. And I'm curious about whether you're experiencing the same thing, first of all. And then also, I know because you've been in this for a really long time, what comes back to you from when we used to have to like flex these muscles before that feel similar to what we're going through now, and what feels different?
I agree with you. I think they did a study that this year, last year was the number one year of the biggest fallout rate over
Really?
20 years.
Hmm.
And then this year, I think is surpassing that, meaning like deals collapsing. So I have a client
Mm.
that's in Canada, and that's what they call it. They call when a deal falls apart, they call it collapsing. I just like that.
Collapsing. I kind of like that. It does, that's what it feels like.
Because
Like
I
the
had so many collapses. I was like, what is that? I was like, that's what we call it here. It says collapse, literally.
it's
It's a
apt.
collapse.
It's
And I was like,
apt.
it's a beautiful way to explain everything just collapses, right?
Here's Deb's
And
definition.
it's such a funny thing. So I had to say that to you. But I think what we're seeing is there's a lot of nervousness in the world. And so people are buying things because they want to buy it. And then something happens, like their uncle or their dad's like, you're getting that house. Or what about ABC? Have you thought about this? Or they didn't see the numbers. They're going to see how much the rates are going to affect, things or the
Yeah.
cost of buying. And I think their insurance costs. I think we're seeing resistance in a lot of the areas that deal with home buying. So not just the actual contract, but we're seeing issues with obviously the interest rates going up and deals being harder to pay for clients need more money for down payment, more money for monthly payment, et cetera. Home insurance costs are higher. Their regulations are higher. I think they're not willing, a lot of places are not willing to insure roofs after a certain age, things like that are causing
Mhm.
people to have alarms go off. I think you're seeing a lot of regulations change in MLSs too. Like in our state
Mm.
just passed a law in Virginia where they're changing how we do septic tank inspections.
Mm,
So
right.
you
Yeah.
can't just do like a simple thing anymore. It's this whole rigmarole that, the client has to sign a contract now and you got to pull a permit and
Mm,
you have to do all this crazy stuff to sell your home. And if they check it, and you can't do a deal in 30 days. So if someone did never knew what it was like to own a septic and then buys this property, I'm just like laying all these things out. I think
yeah.
you're also seeing buyer's remorse come out in a bigger
Mm,
role than
yeah.
we realize. I think there's a lot of inner conflict going on in people that are now showing up. And we're having less skilled agents. So the agents, and I hate to say this because I'm sure there are great ones out there. I'm not trying to like talk bad about the ones that are trained well and doing well. But there are a subset of agents that came on without training, right? That I would call them like the UPS agent, like going and writing the contract and
Yeah.
turning it in, never having to do an inspection, never having to deal
Yeah.
with anything, writing it, going to closing and next, right? And what we're seeing, I think, now is there needs to be more finesse in explaining to our clients what this
Mm,
means to you is that this is the maintenance you're going to have to do. This is what we're going to inspect, what inspection entails, what's a defect, what's not a defect. None of those things were ever explained to some of
hmm.
these agents, and they don't know how to navigate it. And sometimes their higher ups are not helping them, or they're out there wandering by themselves as solo agents without any experience. So I think we're seeing some of that conflicting with the seasoned agents like yourself and Deborah and people that know what they're doing. And you're like, what are you doing? And then there's that
Yeah.
resistance there.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of sue heavy people. a lot of litigious people that love, I'm going to sue you, I'm going to do this. And, a lot of like people trying to flex their muscles for whatever reason too happening.
Mhm.
So, and I actually had to deal with that. And I think there are agents that are blowing deals up on, they don't realize they're doing it, but I think that they're causing issues that don't need to be caused because they don't have any understanding of what the contract really says.
Oh my
Like
gosh.
asking for
Get it.
something that's waived, you waive
Yes.
that, and then you're going to ask for that. How does that even? And then
All
you
the
will. There's something called goodwill, like that good feeling, the good energy you have in a deal. And once
time.
that sours, what happens? And then you go to walk through, and the seller's all pissed,
Hmm.
that the deal went bad, so they're not going to leave the house as nice as they would have maybe left it, right? Things like
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
that takes
Yeah.
agents to navigate to broker the deal. And then you have two people, it's like all these people at odds, I feel like. So
Yeah.
that's what I've seen
Yeah.
in own two eyes happening.
You
With
hit so much of it, I think, and Deb, we were talking about like what so Alicia was saying when right before you got on that in Canada, when a deal like implodes or falls through, they call it collapse. And I was like, that's so
the deal
perfect.
collapses.
Apt
So I got
Oh
on a
my
description.
coaching
gosh,
call
that is a great
and
word
and they
for
Isn't
have
that
a
what it feels
collapse.
like?
They actually have a collapsing, I think a thing that says collapse
Wow. So,
paperwork.
so, so we were talking about like, why do we think this is happening? Has this been your experience as well? And I think you just covered, Alicia, you hit so many of the things that all of us are feeling. And that I think for the person listening out there, you might be hearing this message in different ways. You might be that seasoned agent who
Mhm.
feels a level of frustration with the agents who haven't been through markets like this before
Mhm.
and really either genuinely don't know or maybe haven't like taken the time to really get intimately familiar with the contract. And I'm going to share something interesting in a second that I experienced recently. I'm going to get your take on this. And also, if you're the person listening who is perhaps the agent who is like, uh-oh, that's me, right? Like I haven't had to write a home inspection contingency until now or to navigate a home inspection negotiation. Or I haven't had the buyer who made an impulsive decision and got cold feet or realized that really financially they felt like this wasn't the best decision for them. And so, I think part of it is they're going along believing they're acting in good faith and with goodwill, but not really realizing what the intricacies are and can be of the contract. So, so much of this goes to setting proper expectations, starting with understanding what you're navigating first or could be navigating, and then setting expectations. Deborah, in your market, have you been seeing the same kind of phenomenon happening? Yeah.
The exact same thing. Though I have to say, I am seeing fewer and fewer inexperienced agents on the co-op
Mm,
side. I do
okay.
think in my market, in the Atlanta marketplace, a lot of the agents who are part-time or less skilled, they've already bailed out of the industry.
Mhm.
So the agents
Yes.
I'm working with I'm seeing more and more good cooperation. But
Mm,
what Alicia said about the flex part, I'm also seeing a little bit more, and whether it's the agent or the consumer, whether it's the buyer or the seller, they don't realize that a balanced market means working together. And
Mhm.
it's super important where I have seen buyers on my listings who know that we've been on the market for 45 days, and they feel like they can just be super aggressive with their ask. Or
mm,
I see my seller who thinks they're crazy. I'm not going to do all of those things. And
Mhm.
they forget that we're in a balanced market. So those those nuance, Alicia, you summed it up really, really well. But the nuance in the industry is
Like,
more important than ever. And this is agent skill set, setting expectations for our clients, whether they're sellers or buyers. We have to set expectations. Goodwill, I'm so glad you hit on that because goodwill is an important part of what we're doing. If you're a buyer and you're buying from one of the big corporations, maybe that doesn't matter as much. But in most circumstances, goodwill matters between buyer and seller to have a smooth transaction.
it's still
Reasonable.
a human experience, right? Even if it's
mhm,
a corporation or a builder or investor, there's a human on the other side of that. And if you're being a
mhm.
jerk the whole time, or you're just trying to get and win and jockey, it's going to come back, you know?
Well, let me ask you this because I think, and I really love where we're going with this, and I think you're so right about like the human element. And I'm sitting here thinking as you guys are talking through, when did we lose that? Because here is the experience that I just recently had was, and it was really interesting how it kind of rippled as I told the story to more people, was I had a situation where we had a deal almost collapse, to use that word. And it was a situation where buyers went in, it happened to be a competitive offer scenario. They went in with a completely non-contingent contract, no way to walk away whatsoever. And then about 2 weeks before settlement, they suddenly decided, you know what? I think we're not going to do this after all. And they thought that they just could. And they wrote an email that basically said, we apologize for any inconvenience that this might cause the seller, who had moved, who had signed a lease, who had sold all their furniture, who had relied on the proceeds from the sale. So in my head, I'm like, inconvenience? Do you not realize the harm that you just caused? And they didn't, really. They didn't. So then, as I'm like telling this story to other people, it was really interesting to me. And these were not other real estate people. These are like coaches that I have in my life who are not in the real estate profession. They're like, well, can't people change their minds? And I'm like, no. They signed a legally binding
No,
contract
there's
that
a
impacts other
contract. I
people.
think people forget that they signed a contract. You signed a contract. It's just like people that get married. You get married. There's a
Yes,
contract. You go in
yes.
front of the judge or the minister and you sign paperwork, and they forget they're married. Like that's a perfect example.
Right.
You're
That's
gonna
such a
marry,
great,
and the law is gonna be like, you gotta split it all. What? I have to give you half? Yes. It's
right.
Do you
like,
think, I have a question. Do you think people are more cavalier about contracts because of the way the agents are presenting them?
yeah,
Did you know that 63% of sellers and buyers choose their agent based on local proximity? That's why farming or geofarming is such a proven method for long term success in real estate. If you've been considering becoming a farmer or a geo farmer in your market, but not sure how to get started, check out Farming for Real Estate Agents. This blueprint will walk you through exactly how to choose a geofarm area, how to figure out by running some calculations whether the farm area that you're selecting can support your goals, and will help you track your return on investment. You'll also hear from locally famous farmers who have already dominated their market shares, so you can R&D their secrets and dominate the area that you choose to geofarm.
Is
I do.
it possible that the agents who are representing people are not carefully guiding and being good consultants to their clients and advising them that this is a legally binding contract? Because I am seeing that too. There
I
is
think they're scared.
a flippant air about the
Yes.
contract not having teeth. Um, and that's a real problem.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think
I
the issue
wonder,
is, oh, sorry, go
oh,
ahead.
I was just gonna say, I wonder whether it's because we've gotten into this habit of you send it via DocuSign. You never really like maybe you even got all you're just texting people for their terms. I don't know how much you're really talking to people if you're, the agent who's not really understand helping the person understand, like you said, Deborah, that the contract has teeth. So you're collecting offer terms via a text or email. You're filling out a DocuSign. They click through it. They don't really know what they're signing, probably. So it feels very easy to do things that way. And it probably doesn't, it's almost like I think about, they talk about that when you write something in your hand, it gets into your brain a different way. Or when you read something on paper, it gets into your synapses differently than if you're just reading like the digital version of it. So I wonder whether that might be part of it. I don't know.
I think there's a need for self-accountability that we're lost in this world.
Mm.
Like nobody wants to take accountability for anything that they're doing. And I think,
Or it's the Amazonification.
yeah, and I think
If I
that's
don't
a,
like it, I'll just return it.
yeah, or they just don't want to take responsibility that they committed to do something. The commitments are what we're seeing, like lack of
Mhm.
responsibility. Like I have, as coaches, like a couple of clients will come in and just be like, I don't want to do it anymore. And I'm like, well, you signed a contract. So what I do is I just remove myself from that. I think it's really important that agents don't get caught. I think they get nervous that they're going to get blamed and they're going to get yelled at. So you have a lot of timid
Oh,
agents.
yes. Right.
Even if they're experienced, they're just timid and they're just scared and they're just trying to show their worth. Let me show you how hard I'm working for you. Let me show you my worth. Whatever you say, I'll do. So it's like losing control of your client, whether it's your seller or your buyer. Sometimes you just lose control because they're just maniacs and they turn cuckoo on you. And I
Yeah.
actually fielded a call when I was away on that with a client and with a agent, and I said, what did we learn here? And she said, literally, do not, she offered it up. They had waived anything under $1,000 and they asked for it. And instead of her saying, no, you waived it here, she said, we could see. We'll put it in and we'll see. And I'm like,
Mm,
why would you do that? Like,
mm,
why would you guide them? That doesn't even make sense
right.
as an, and you think that they're going to happily just give that to you? Like, who does that? Right. And she's like, I don't know. I was like, yeah, that's why they would turn cuckoo, because when the seller said no, they took it as a slight because you guided. All they heard is we'll ask, right? And they
Mhm,
didn't hear
mhm.
that. And so I've heard other agents doing that. Ever since that happened, I was kind of pulling some of these like, oh yeah, I'm like, who does that?
Everybody does it now.
I
I think
remove
it's
it
very
off the
common.
table. I
Yeah.
remove it off the table and I say, and I remind people when they send things over, if it sends over, just as a reminder, let's remember before you send me this addendum, I just want to remind you, if I'm on the listing side, please do not put anything on there that you waived, because I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be nasty. So if you
Yeah.
want to save your deal and you don't want to go into a showdown situation, please just don't do that. So I think
Hmm.
just up front, to say it up front, like, remember, you
Yeah.
agreed to this. Just like when you remember, don't forget to leave the appliances if you left the people that take their appliances after they're supposed to leave them,
Oh, y'all,
or fighting over a
y'all.
$500, freezer or something stupid, like things
Yeah.
like that. It's like have some decency is what the issue is. I think I
Yeah.
always say to my sellers, how would you like to receive a property is how you need to leave it.
Hmm.
Well, and if the agents on are not it always comes back to the
Yeah.
agents.
Yeah.
We have to spend the time educating our clients. That's what they've hired us for.
Yes. Yes.
And you have to
Exactly.
be okay with standing up and saying, Mr. Seller, Mr. Buyer, or Mrs. Buyer, you're wrong. That's not how
It's
we're going
funny.
to.
I was late to this podcast recording because I was working with a seller who we had a good laugh. He said, things are going very well with him, and this house was previously on the market with someone else. It didn't sell. I picked it up. We're making the changes. And he laughed. He said, I don't know why anyone would hire an agent and not listen to them. I said,
Mm.
and I laughed. I said, well, I don't know. They're not my clients. But also, why would somebody hire an agent and then try to tell us what to do? That happens a lot. Sometimes the
Mhm.
clients try to tell us what to do, and it's our job to say, hold up, let me explain the terms of the contract to you. Let me
Yeah.
explain to you
Right.
Yeah.
in Georgia, this is what our contracts say.
Right,
So,
right. And how it actually is acting in their best interest. And I think this is the thing that I'm getting from the agents, or at least the sense, is they believe, like to your point, Alicia, that they're doing what the client wants them to do is always in the client's best interest. And for us to be able to go high level and be like, well, let me just tell you what could happen, what you're exposing yourself to if you do remove that dishwasher from your house. It could be okay, or it could be a lawsuit. So think about that a little bit. And then I think also coming back to like the part about these are human beings on the other side of the transaction. I think that it gets so lost. And especially for us to be able to say, like, I always say to people, so put yourself in the shoes of the seller for a second here, right? So think about what has happened. So you've now got your house under contract. Check to make sure that the buyer could do all the things they said they were going to do. You took the advice of an agent, then you made plans that were completely contingent upon this transaction settling, and you selected this offer because it was so strong and non-contingent. And now your buyer your life is in upheaval because your buyer has decided on a whim that they don't want to buy the house anymore. How would you feel? Like, where would that put you? And sometimes if they're a compassionate, empathetic person, they can say, oh, okay, now I get it. The other thing I think is, for, like you were saying, Deborah, you to be able to like sit down and explain what the contract says, and to you, Alicia, being able to say, this is how it's going to go. So, for example, something that always comes up is trying to get back in the house again to like measure for blinds or for flooring or whatever. Bring a contractor in after anything happens. So, one thing I always say to people is, and this is where if expectations differ, conflict it arises, right? So, if my seller believes after that inspection, let's say there is an inspection, that's it. They're not coming back in the house until the final walkthrough. If I say that, I also need to say that to the agent on the other side because the agent on the other side might not have read that clause in the contract, might not know that, might feel pressured because they might have said, oh, if the carpet installer couldn't get here during that inspection window, don't worry, well, you can get us in later, right? And then the people pleasing agent says, oh, yeah, yeah, I think I'll ask, like you said, Alicia, and what do they hear? I'll ask. They don't hear, no, that's not happening. Your shot was during the home inspection. So making sure that we're articulating and then also
Or
making,
like in Georgia, it's the opposite. Our contracts clearly state that the buyer has the right with reasonable notice to do additional inspections. And that would include measuring. It's written,
Yeah.
it's
Ours
it's
isn't
a
any inspection you want within the inspection window.
well,
So
within that window, yes.
we have a
But after
window.
no,
that,
no, ours are all the way, and it's with
really,
reasonable notice. So
Wow.
when I have a
what does
difficult seller
reasonable
who
mean?
doesn't, yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, it ends up in the broker's on the broker's desk
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah.
But this is where, as agents, I am particularly skilled at getting people to do what I want. But that human element matters. And nobody likes winning more than me, but I will not go after a win just for a win's sake and eliminate the human element from the conversation, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's where things do collapse. All right, we
Mhm.
got 2 more minutes, guys, and I just want to real quick have you guys talk about for 1 minute if you, since you both are experienced and you've been through a market like this before, and if you're talking to that agent, if you're, the person out there listening who feels like you could use a shoring up of your skills, you're kind of in that uh-oh, or let's say you've kind of like knocked it out of the park, you've had a lot of transactions, but a lot of them have collapsed. Lisa, let me go to you first. What's in like 30 seconds or less, what's your advice for that agent?
I think that it's the whole thing is about prospecting. Like, right, make sure you have enough in your pipeline to move forward and also understand the contracts. Always follow the contract. You can
Hmm.
Mm.
go wrong if you follow the contract. So always guide your seller, go back to the contract says this, the contract says that. The good thing is we have a house to sell. So if you have a seller and it falls through, well, that's fine. None will come. We'll be fine. I just went through that, and have the confidence, which then gives you the authority to help them through it. I think that's the thing is be confident. Don't shrink back. It's part of our life and our business that things fall through. And I'm like, and if it's a buyer side and it falls apart for whatever reason, just say you didn't want the house anyways. So someone protected you from it. We're moving on because you need to get them to erase that so you can move forward. That's the biggest thing.
Nice. Deborah, how about you?
I think if you have a lot, contracts do fall apart, they do collapse. But
Mhm.
if you have an excessive number of collapsing contracts, then you're not skilled enough. You
Mhm.
need education when you're walking through a house. Maybe it's in
Mhm.
selecting the things. Learn about inspections, learn about houses themselves, and then know your contracts so that you can speak succinctly with your clients and take a leadership role because as an agent, you are a leader. You are leading the transaction.
Excellent advice. And I'm going to give one more thing before we wrap, which is I would also say, remember that old saying, your vibe attracts your tribe? If the tribe
Yes.
you're attracting is cuckoo, like Alicia
Shady.
says, and yeah, and maybe, do a mindset check for yourself first. Make sure what you are presenting is calm, confident, and competent, and then watch how things begin to transform in your business. All right, hang in there through this tough market, guys. We got you. Thank you, Alicia. Thank you, Deborah, for being here. Thank you all for listening and watching. This has been So You Want to Be a Real Estate Agent. We'll see you next time.
Bye.